In an e-learning course, learners need to have a clear understanding of what is expected of them, what the students are to know and be able to do as a result of the instruction. Such statements are known as learning objectives. Learning objectives describe what the learners should be able to do as a result of the e-learning course. They describe what learners can do and what they complete in a unit or module of instruction and are typically derived from a goal analysis.